Rules of engagement. Hold that phrase. You are going to need it. On May 23, 2026, at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, Toto Wolff picked up his radio during a Formula One sprint race and told his two drivers to stop. Not to pit, not to manage tires or protect a position. To stop. Because George Russell and Kimi Antonelli had just arrived at Turn 1 together, and what happened next changed the entire character of the 2026 World Championship. Antonelli attempted to pass Russell on the outside going into the first corner. Russell did not give him room. Antonelli was forced off the circuit, ran across the grass, dropped positions, and immediately came on the radio with the kind of message that team principals dread hearing from their own drivers. That was really unfair. Not measured, not diplomatic, genuinely angry. 19 years old, leading the World Championship, and furious at the man parked 5 meters away in the same garage. Lando Norris, watching the chaos unfold ahead of him, quietly moved into second place and said nothing. By the end of that weekend, Antonelli led the championship by 43 points. Russell had retired from the Grand Prix with a power unit failure while leading. And the fastest team on the grid had spent 2 days fighting itself in front of the entire sport. Wolff told both drivers afterward that they were permitted to race each other, but that they needed to do it smarter. He gave that permission a name. He called it the rules of engagement. By the end of this video, you will understand why that phrase matters more than any championship number, and why what happened in Canada was not a one-off flash of tension, but the moment a carefully managed rivalry became something genuinely personal. The detail that makes Canada more than a racing incident is what Wolff did in the hour between the sprint and qualifying. It was not what he said to the media, what happened inside the team. Antonelli and Russell sat down together. Wolff was also involved. The pair clarified what had happened at Turn 1, what each driver had felt, and what each driver had expected from the other. Russell said he understood Antonelli's frustration and that he would have reacted exactly the same way if the positions had been reversed. Antonelli emerged from that conversation calmer but still aggrieved, noting that emotions had been high and that they would continue to discuss it internally. Martin Brundle, watching the sprint incident frame by frame on Sky Sports, reached a conclusion that cut through all the careful language. He said he could now see why Antonelli felt he was entitled to more racing room. And then he said something that the Mercedes management team will have found uncomfortable to hear. He said Mercedes had realized Antonelli was spiraling, that the teenager leading the championship under immense pressure had briefly lost his composure in the heat of the moment, and that the team had intervened precisely because they could see it happening in real time. A team principal stepping onto the radio to calm his championship-leading driver mid-race is not a normal event. It is a signal of exactly how quickly this situation escalated from competitive to something requiring active management. Then came Sunday, and Sunday made everything more complicated. Russell took pole position for the Grand Prix. He was not just fast, he was dominant in qualifying, posting a lap that Antonelli could not match, delivering exactly the kind of Saturday performance that should set up a controlled race win. He led from the start, he managed the gap, he was doing everything right, and on lap 30, his power unit failed. Antonelli inherited the lead, converted it, won his 4th consecutive Grand Prix, and the championship gap that had been 9 points going into Canada became 43 points coming out of it, not because Antonelli was dramatically faster on Sunday, but because Russell's engine stopped on one of the best weekends he had produced all season. The response from Russell was measured in language and devastating in content. He told Sky Italy that the championship now felt like Antonelli's to lose. He referenced the safety car in Japan that handed his teammate a cheaper pit stop, the qualifying failure in China that cost him a proper Q3 run, the red flag in Australia that allowed Antonelli to post a lap time rather than start from the back. He said he could not seem to catch a break. He said he did not wish bad luck on anyone and just wanted to fight hard and fight fair. And then he said the championship was his teammates to lose. That is the most significant public statement by a driver about his teammate in this sport since Rosberg admitted in Abu Dhabi 2016 that Hamilton was the better driver. It is not a surrender, it is a recalibration. It is a driver looking at 43 points, at a retirement from the lead, at a season where every piece of circumstance has pointed in one direction, and saying out loud what most drivers in his position would only say privately. From the outside, Fred Vasseur watched all of it from the Ferrari garage and delivered the most revealing verdict of the entire Canada weekend. He told Canal Plus that the Russell Antonelli situation was a rich man's problem. He said it was Toto's job to manage, not his. He noted that in every team this scenario has appeared, and that the drivers are there to deliver results, and that rivalry between teammates often leads to performance. That assessment is correct. It is also incomplete, because the rich man's problem framing only holds as long as the management is working. And Canada was the first weekend in 2026 where the management visibly struggled to contain what was happening between these two drivers. Wolff's public response was to reach for a precedent. He pointed to the Verstappen era at Red Bull as a reference point for how rules of engagement between teammates should function. He said drivers must be allowed to race, that acknowledging the racing is part of the best approach, but that the team is always greater than either individual. He said there are values the team stands for, and that the moment a driver believes everything revolves around them, that is not a mindset Mercedes would accept. He warned Antonelli that Russell would come back stronger, directly, by name, in front of the media. That last part is the one that has not received enough attention. Wolff telling his championship-leading driver publicly that his teammate is coming back harder is not routine team principal communication. It is a deliberate signal to Antonelli that the 43-point gap does not mean the fight is over, and that the psychological comfort of a large lead is exactly the kind of comfort he cannot afford to feel. The rules of engagement, as Wolff has framed them, are the mechanism by which he is trying to allow both drivers to race at full capacity without destroying the team in the process. He wants the performance that comes from genuine competition. He does not want the wreckage that comes when competition crosses into something that cannot be managed from the pit wall. But here is the thing that the rich man's problem framing does not account for. The stewards got involved after Canada. The sprint incident at Turn 1 was examined. Russell received a financial penalty for his role in forcing Antonelli off circuit. Antonelli had demanded sanctions over the team radio in real time, multiple times, while the race was still running. The stewards, who had not acted during the session itself, produced a verdict afterward that Russell's team felt was being treated as insufficient by Antonelli's side. When a team's two championship contenders require external adjudication from the FIA stewards to determine who was at fault in a Turn 1 incident, the rules of engagement have already broken down at the level where they matter most. Wolff can set the framework inside the building. He cannot enforce it at 200 kilometers per hour in the braking zone when the championship is on the line and both drivers want the same piece of track. That is what changed in Canada. Not the points gap, which can close. Not the retirement, which was mechanical and therefore outside anyone's control. What changed is that this rivalry now has a history, a specific corner, a specific radio message, a steward's verdict, and a public concession from Russell that the title is his teammates to lose. Monaco is next, then Barcelona, Silverstone, and a long summer of racing where 17 rounds of points are still available, and the gap between these two drivers will either grow into something irreversible or contract into something explosive. Wolff's warning that Russell will come back stronger is not false comfort. Russell was leading in Canada. He was faster on Saturday. He is not a driver who has been exposed as slower than his teammate. He is a driver who has had 4 weekends of circumstances turn against him in a car that should have produced 4 championships. The moment those circumstances stop conspiring, the rules of engagement are going to be tested in ways that a financial fine and a quiet conversation in a Montreal paddock cannot prepare either driver for. Antonelli, asked about the weekend after winning on Sunday, said it was fun racing with George, that it reminded Russell of his karting days, and that both of them enjoyed the battle. Russell, in the same paddock on the same evening, said the championship now feels like his teammates to lose. Both of those things are true. Both were said within hours of each other after the same weekend. And the gap between them, between enjoying the battle and conceding the championship lead, is exactly where this rivalry lives now. The rules of engagement are a framework. They are not a guarantee. And the corner comes faster than the rulebook every single time.